Welcome.
Thank you very much for having me.
No problem. You started your job, this job, because I know you've worked for the mayor's office in many roles, but you started this job in January of 2023.
Correct.
Which is a year that sadly has a dubious distinction of being Kansas City's deadliest year.
Absolutely.
What was being done at the time and what's being done now? Kind of peel back the curtain. What's being done to curb crime?
That is a great question, and there is a lot being done. It may not always feel that way, especially for our residents and our citizens that is being touched by this issue far too much. But over the last year, we have revived focused deterrence. If anybody remembers Nova back from 2014, it is the last time our homicides were under 100, and we were employing a strategy called focused deterrence, where you identify those most likely to shoot or be shot, and you invite them to a meeting called a call-in. We actually just had our second call-in this past Thursday, where these very, very high-risk individuals get to hear from members in our community, like a mother that has lost their child to homicide. They definitely get an enforcement message as well, but we also offer them restorative social services that will hopefully inspire them to change their life. But if they don't, they will know that they will land themselves on the prioritized prosecution list. It worked back then. We're only about 6 months in or so, and it will work again. We also have a task force at the city called the Multidisciplinary Public Safety Task Force, where we look at a lot of different commercial businesses that have had a plethora of public safety challenges, or might even be public safety nuisances themselves. You know, the business owner that is not adequately investing in the safety of their patrons. A great example is the auto shop at 57th and Prospect that served as the scene for a mass shooting. We were able to get that business closed, along with a host of others that have really been sores to our community. We have enacted policy allowing KCPD to impound vehicles believed to be involved in street racing a lot quicker, raising the fines and punishments on those types of offenses, investing $30 million into violence prevention at the city. A lot has been happening, and we are hopeful that it will continue to lead us in the right direction, because we are trending in the right direction.
You mentioned the focused deterrent program, Safe KC.
Yes.
Similar to Nova KC, I know that KCPD broke away from Nova in 2018, saying that it wasn't effective enough. So what's going to make this program more effective?
Well, it was effective. And the chief at that time decided that he did not want to continue the program, and changes in leadership have consequences. He was more than able to make that decision on behalf of his department, but I'm very happy that Chief Graves has bought in to reviving the strategy. But we have made some tweaks. You know, the community had some concerns about Nova. Were we casting too wide of a net? Were we using restorative practices that actually inspire the clients to take advantage of the help that we had to offer? Well, I am pleased to report that we have made those tweaks. Even the way that we run the call-ins is completely different. We used to do it auditorium style, which will create a hierarchy of importance.
Sure.
When you have the chief of police, the mayor, and all of these other public safety principals kind of sitting over you, it would create this fear and this furthered reluctance to engage with the process. Well, now we just all sit around like a happy family in a square, and even eat dinner with the people that we invite to the call-ins, and give them a $100 gift card for their participation.
Interesting. Yeah, you've mentioned this need for a holistic approach to just dealing with the crime issue here at home, and that you've also said that we can't incarcerate our way out of these issues that we're seeing. But you also have said that you do a lot more prosecuting in Jackson County if elected prosecutor. How do those two concepts coexist?
They have to coexist. We have to figure out and find ways for them to coexist. And I think that's part of the reason why we're in the predicament that we're in now. Over recent years, we've either swung too far to only focusing on prosecution, incarceration, and punitive punishments, which absolutely play a vital role in our public safety infrastructure. But we've also at times swung too far in the direction of only focusing on service deployment and only focusing on transformation and restorative practices. There has to be space for both. And so for me, my platform is all about strengthening our investigations, expanding our capacity so we can hold more people accountable and reduce case dismissals, but also understanding that we only have so much jail space in our community. Even at the county level, current jail only has 872 spots. The new jail will have about 1,000 spots. But when there's 9,063 reports taken last year for stolen auto, we have a lot more people that we have to hold accountable, but find alternate means of accountability. And so those two principles have to coexist. Strict accountability, but understanding that we have to deploy resources as well.
Let's talk about accountability for something sadly we see all too often, and that is young kids and young adults shooting other young kids and young adults in our city, in our county. As we said, record homicide numbers over the last 5 years. How do you plan to address that problem as prosecutor? Because Kansas City, whether we like it or not, is starting to get a bit of a reputation as an unsafe city.
And I would argue that it's not starting to get a reputation as a dangerous city. We have been reeling with the effects of these issues for quite some time, especially in the neighborhood that I grew up in. And so as it pertains to juveniles specifically, and we can get to violent crime more generally here in a second, the juvenile officer is the ultimate arbiter on whether or not a juvenile will be certified as an adult and what charges that they will face at the juvenile level. Well, I want to work collaboratively with our new juvenile officer to identify a set of factors that will automatically trigger a certification hearing. Things like, was a gun involved in the commission of the crime? Was death or seriously bodily injured caused on the victim? Or is this their third or more offense? If any of those factors exist, I am of the belief that a certification hearing should automatically be triggered, and then a judge should decide if that young person will be certified as an adult. Now, if they are certified as an adult, when they get to my office, I am absolutely prepared to prosecute them to the fullest extent of the law, because the harsh reality is holding them accountable is not just for the victim. It's actually for that young person themselves. We are selling a pipe dream to our young people that they can commit egregious acts of violence and receive a slap on the wrist, receive electronic monitoring that they don't have to comply with. That is actually sending them further down a road of criminality, a road of despair that might ultimately lead in death, as we see far too often in our community. But I believe that we cannot talk about juveniles without talking about parents as well. When there is evidence, and this happens more often than you might think, of a parent actually being complicit in the criminal acts of their child, we have to evaluate utilizing the endangering the welfare of a child charge in the first degree a lot more often. If a parent is found to be criminally negligent, completely checking out of their parental responsibilities, endangering the welfare of a child in the second degree has to be evaluated. And it is rough to have that conversation, because as an empathetic person, I of course understand the notion that sometimes young people make poor decisions, but murder isn't a poor decision. It is murder, and it has to be treated as such. And I'm fully prepared to not only hold young people that are certified as adults accountable, but their parents as well.
You mentioned this notion that kids can go out and commit crimes and think that they're just going to get a slap on the wrist. Is that something that's inherent with the current administration of the county prosecutor's office? Is that something that is an issue now with that office and something you change?
I would say that it is an issue not only with the Jackson County Prosecutor's Office, but more so the juvenile office, the family court, right? And I understand that there are different standards applied to juvenile prosecutions. You really do have to focus more on rehabilitation and how to restore that young person. But we have to be realistic in that some acts of violence are not warranted for rehabilitation, especially when murder and mass shootings in the public eye, like at the Chiefs Parade, happen. We have to hold space for all of these understandings and belief in our criminal justice system.
Other side of the spectrum, you worked for the current prosecutor, Jean Peters Baker, for a little while at the county prosecutor's office. Years ago, she pledged to stop prosecuting nonviolent drug offenses. That got plenty of pushback at the time, still receives criticism. Is that a policy that you would continue?
In part.
Okay.
For nonviolent lower level possession drug cases, I do plan to continue that policy. Look at what they're doing in Lee Summit, Chief Forbes with the Lee Summit PD. When there is a nonviolent drug possession case, they have a partnership with Rediscover where they immediately route that person to treatment through their Safe Passage program. I would love to see that replicated all over Jackson County, because drug possession level cases, those individuals need treatment. And providing treatment in an incarceral setting, studies show and data shows that that will not actually fix their addiction issues and the mind cycle of addiction. But drug distributors, whether there's a nexus to violence or not, I absolutely believe we have to start charging those cases across the board. Look at what they're doing in Kansas City, Kansas. By aggressively going after drug distributors, they were able to cut their homicides in half because you charge the drug distributor, you execute search warrants, confiscate weapons that can no longer be used in a homicide or a non-fatal shooting. And so I am fully committed to reversing that policy as it pertains to drug distributors. We're going to be charging those across the board, whether they're violent or not.
I want to touch on some of the other policies of the current prosecutor. She has pushed back against Missouri's near total abortion ban and a number of other laws that she has claimed to have been restrictive of citizens and residents in Kansas City and Jackson County. If you're elected, are there any crimes that you would decline to prosecute?
I would continue the current prosecutor's position on reproductive rights. I believe that criminal law plays no role in a woman's autonomy over her body, and by prosecuting providers, which the current abortion ban does allow, that creates a chilling effect on women's access to reproductive care. And I am fully committed to towing that hard line and making sure that we continue to trust women in this community with making their own decisions on behalf of themselves and their families. I already talked a little bit about nonviolent, low-level drug possession cases. I will not be prosecuting those, instead using combat resources to divert those individuals to treatment. But aside from those two, I am fully committed to retaining law and order in our community. There's a code of conduct in Jackson County that we need to make abundantly clear needs to be adhered to. I don't think that we are doing that to the degree that we could, especially as it pertains to violent crimes.
You mentioned Combat, which is funding for crime prevention and other programs in Jackson County. You're a huge proponent of raising the exposure and funding for that, right? Tell me about that.
Absolutely, because you know, Combat currently lives under the prosecutor's office. That decision was made by the Jackson County legislature. And because of that, I rebuke the notion that a modern prosecutor can only be focused on prosecuting. The job requires and entails so much more. Even if we incarcerated everybody today that we had probable cause to believe committed a crime, unless we do that root cause work, unless we invest in affordable housing, mental health resources, I even want to start a county-wide mentorship program for suspended students so that they're not out stealing your car while they're supposed to be learning or holding themselves accountable and figuring out the wrongfulness of their conduct that led to the suspension in the first place. Again, it has to be both and. It can't be either or. And so I'm a huge proponent of leveraging Combat funds and what is going to yield the most results the quickest.
We've seen a rash of property crimes. I mean, the numbers from KCPD will show, well, it's down from last year, but they've really been ramping up in the last month or two and beyond, but especially the last month getting a lot of publicity. What would you do to help curb property crimes in the county?
We have to get more property crimes cases actually submitted to the prosecutor's office for charging. And how do we do that collaboratively? Police, prosecutor, and community all coming to the table and understanding, all right, once the cases get in the door, for property crimes cases, they usually get charged to the degree of about 86%. So how can we work together to get more of those cases inside of the door? What they're doing all over the country and what the current administration has even started to do, which I definitely plan to grow, is having prosecutors respond to the scenes of high shoplifting areas or areas that have seen a lot of car thefts and work directly with the security guards on scene or the homeowner on scene, review the available surveillance footage, review any other available evidence, and then go to KCPD or any local law enforcement agency and say, hey, I'm the prosecutor, I reviewed this surveillance footage, I think there's something there. Now can you work it up so you can submit it to my office for official charges?
Just try to break up any logjam that exists.
Exactly, and only utilize KCPD or other law enforcement agencies' resources when we think that there is meat and potatoes to the charge. We understand our law enforcement officers are short-staffed. We understand that they are strapped for resources. And so how can the prosecutor help them actually get more concrete, solid cases across the door through the finish line for charging so we can continue to send that deterring message to the rest of the community?
Let's talk about the relationship with police for a bit. I mean, crime fighting is likely at its best, right, when everybody's working together.
Absolutely.
When there's some synergy, I guess would be the buzzword, when everybody's parties kind of pulling the wagon in the same direction. How do you address frustration from rank and file officers about a lack of prosecution on the part of the county? What would you change? You say they're not sending us the cases, but there's some sort of disconnect in between.
Well, and it's not necessarily that they're not sending the cases, is that we're not working together enough to actually be able to solve the cases and make them suitable for submission. And I think that there's a huge area of opportunity there for greater collaboration. But my plan on improving the relationship between the prosecutor and all of our local law enforcement agencies is to have tough conversations. And we often talk about trust, right? Trust, we have to reinstill trust not only between the community and the criminal legal system, but between the prosecutor and law enforcement as well. Well, you don't get to trust without transparency. And speaking transparently, nobody's really knocking it out the park right now. And we have to own that and all own our respective shortcomings. I don't believe enough violent crimes cases are being charged by the prosecutor right now. How can we come to the table and fix that? How can we come to the table in unison and figure out how to get more property crimes cases in the door? How can we come together in unison and identify the prolific juvenile offenders and really address them in a concrete and proactive way? It's about partnership. And partnership, if you're really going to be a true partner, is understanding where we are all falling short and figuring out ways that we can come together to help each other fix all of the troubling statistics that are a current part of our equation right now.
Yeah, and it's a complex equation, right?
Very complex.
You've listed a number of issues, but day one, if you get in the door, you take the oath, what's the main issue that you want to tackle?
I think the prerequisite issue is the relationship mending. It's understanding that when proposals are made to our local law enforcement agencies, even if there's not local control, understand that these proposals are being made with the same North Star of making our community safer. It's not finger pointing, it's not criticizing, it is understanding that my success is dependent on yours and vice versa. So how can we actually come together? And for the past 3 years, being able to work at the City of Kansas City and so closely with KCPD has really given me a great foundational relationship to make that happen.
One way or the other, Jackson County is going to make history, right? It's going to have its first black female prosecutor in office. What do you believe that means for representation and for the relationship between law enforcement and the community it serves?
It's huge for representation. I mean, the data is clear. The vast majority of crime is concentrated in underserved communities, heavily populated by people of color. This is what the numbers show. And so the concept of those neighborhoods having a prosecutor that they see themselves in, that they believe in, that is going to make it much more likely for witnesses to cooperate with the investigations, witnesses to testify in court, and that trust, that elusive word trust that we always talk about. Representation is a huge vehicle to get us there. But even more importantly, the efficacy, the results that we will be able to garner. You see, when I was in the prosecutor's office, I was called on to take off my prosecutorial hat and put on my community hat, because for historical reasons or even personal reasons, people of color in some high crime neighborhoods do have a reluctance to cooperate with the criminal legal system. These are just realities that we have to confront and overcome. And by electing a person of color that not only physically looks like them, but also lives in a similar neighborhood, also can speak their language, this is going to allow us to bring more cases because we have more witnesses and more victims that are willing to believe in the system because of the representation that we will be able to offer.
Melissa Johnson, thanks for your time.
Thank you.